All right. Oh my goodness. Hello, everyone. So welcome to the Awesome Careers podcast show. Thank y'all so much for joining me. My name is 𝗍𝗲𝗍. I am the host here of the show, and I'm so pleased to welcome everyone back to season 2. So we're launching off new professionals who's going to share about their experiences and their journey and spotlight different things. If you are here with us on the live stream or catching us on the replay, then feel free to say hi in chat. Let us know what city you're streaming or watching from. And I saw that Andy, you're here with us tonight as well. So thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate that. Tonight I have with us is our guest. Folks may have known him for his work, but I have with us tonight is Chenue, 𝗔n𝗰𝗵𝘀𝗁𝗀, and he's going to talk about his experience. Now, Chenue is a reporter at 11A Live NBC in Atlanta, and soon he's going to actually be starting his a new anchor morning position and in Des Moines, Iowa, and he's been in the TV news industry for almost a decade and an active member of the Asian American Journalists Association. In the Atlanta chapters. He was born and raised in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, and majored in electronic communications. While in college, he's completed 3 TV news internships, which helped him land his first reporting gig in Eugene, Oregon. So thank you so much, and help me welcome Chenue. And for folks, if you are again tuning in from whether you're here catching us on the live stream or you're watching the replay, let us know how you're doing. How's everyone doing this summer? I hope everyone's well and safe. Without further ado, we're going to jump right in because there's a lot of good questions we probably want to ask Chenue. So we're going to just jump right in, folks. So thank y'all so much for joining. I really appreciate that. And without further ado, let's bring in Chenue.
Hey.
Hi, Chenue. How are you doing?
Good, how are you guys?
Great, awesome. And I just want to catch really quick, Michelle's here with us, and then also Andy's here with us. So thank y'all so much.
Hey guys.
So glad everyone's tuning in. And of course, what is it? Me's here. Hello, and hi. Is it 𝗵𝗲 or is it 𝗲𝗲? Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. Okay, Chenue, let us know a little bit more about your work and who you are, because I think folks are probably curious. I remember I came across your profile and I was like, no, who is this person? And so I'm curious, how did you become interested in reporting, news reporting specifically?
Yeah, so I'm just a normal home kid from Minnesota, Twin Cities, and growing up, we watched in my household, at least, we watched a lot of news just because it was always on, and we didn't have cable, so. And then, I think like us being Hmong, we tell a lot of stories, from our grandparents, our parents, we tell a lot of stories, and that's a lot of what journalism is. And so I think I always kind of gravitated towards telling stories and finding ways to, kind of incorporate that into something that could become a career. And so when I landed on journalism, I think it just kind of clicked, and I just kind of took it from there and just slowly kept building on it throughout college and my career, and now I'm here. So,
so remind us, what's the difference between because you're currently right now doing the news reporting, but that's at night versus like the morning reporting, which you're going to be transitioning into. How is that different?
Yeah. So actually, what's been interesting is that for most of my career, I've worked the night shift. So 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock shows. Right now at my station, I'm actually working a morning reporting shift here in Atlanta. So usually by now I'm already like dead asleep because I get up at 3 a.m. and then I'm on the news at 5 and 6 in the morning.
Yeah, early bird. You got to be early bird.
Yeah, exactly. I got to get up early. So right now I'm still reporting from the field, but I'm going to be moving to Des Moines at the end of the month, starting at the ABC station there, and I'll be morning anchoring. So I'll be on the anchor desk. In the studio, and I won't be out in the field anymore.
Oh, that's interesting. And is this something you've always wanted to do, the field versus the anchor desk? Like, what's uniquely different between the two of them?
Yeah. So each one is it has its own kind of skill set. But I think for me, I started off as a reporter, and I wanted to really hone my craft as a reporter, because as a reporter, I'm out in the field. I'm doing one story a day. But I'm doing lots of research. I'm doing interviews. I'm doing, sometimes I'm shooting, I'm editing. So I'm doing a lot to put together that one story for the show. So that's me as a reporter. I'll be live in the field. now I'm going to be an anchor. So I'll be on the anchor desk. I'll be, tossing to the reporters for them to do their stories. And I'll be, in studio reading through the show. So you'll see me on air a lot more.
That's wonderful. We want to see you on air more. That's so awesome. And I'm so glad. So I think that you really cover a lot of the difference between the responsibilities and the duties between the anchor desk and the reporter. And I'm curious, kind of walk us back a little bit more. You mentioned about your childhood and watching TV and because there was no cable back then, right? So you weren't on the Cartoon Networks, right? So you had to, you were stuck with whatever channel that was available for you. And I'm wondering about how did you know you were a good fit for it? What were the skills and that you had to develop early on to prepare you for this career? So for example, being in a position, I always thought when I watch someone on TV, they have great public speaking skills because you're talking you're talking to the camera right now, but you actually have to pronounce words very clearly. You have to speak in a way that actually captures the audience. And I didn't realize that until I started observing more. And I'm a lot of these publics, they actually have to have public speaking skills.
Yeah, there are some things that the longer you do it, it's repetition and you get better. Throughout my career, I've had I've had coaches that I've worked with, and so some things you develop along the way, and some things you kind of pick up quicker. So for example, like you mentioned with the speaking and with the presentation. I've had stations where they've had coaches come in and really work with you on certain things. So they'll watch you over a couple of weeks, come back and work with you on things. So that's been really helpful for me as far as just, how I track my voice on stories, how I sound on air, or how I present things. So I've been lucky in that sense where I've had professional coaches work with me. But also, there are some things where you just have to be very diligent about working on by yourself, or whether that's your writing skills or kind of just mentally preparing yourself and being prepared for certain interviews that you go into. And then, more than anything, just learning how to have thick skin, man, because you just don't know, what type of feedback you're going to get sometimes, or just kind of having some thick skin, and kind of being mentally prepared for what could be thrown your way. Because that's the thing about this job is every day is kind of different. So you never really know what you're going to face at the beginning of the day, and so you kind of just have to be mentally prepared for what comes your way.
Yeah, and so give us an example of stories that are really big that you have covered, and also stories that are probably smaller but you find yourself doing more research on.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I recently covered the Atlanta spa shootings. Obviously that was a big national story this spring. So I was on that story here in Atlanta. I also covered the presidential elections, and obviously Georgia was such a big spectacle of the elections, because we also had the runoff elections. And then all the protesting last summer. Atlanta became a kind of again a hotspot for all of the protests. And then I've covered a couple mass shootings in my career, and those were the big stories where you really have to. You really have a lot of eyes on you for those stories. But then, there are some smaller stories that I've covered here in Atlanta. I've done stories with a couple like Hmong families, and those are the stories that I think, you think that, oh man, only Hmong people are going to care about these stories, or these stories are only going to impact the Hmong community. But then, when the stories run, you see that the reach is so much wider, because what's the story that's being told impacts people, whether you're Hmong or not. And so I think some of those stories really, to me, stuck out, because initially I didn't think it was going to have the reach that it did, but it ended up having that reach. So
that's wonderful. And I think that's probably part of the job where you mentioned the story, the big stories, like, you know, can be as big as national coverage, like the, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know, the election, and some of the smaller ones. And as a reporter, when you're out in the field and you're doing all of these work, do you, and you mentioned like having thick skin, why would you need to have it? Are there situations where you are in danger, or, you know, are you gonna get like bad, like negative, not bad, but like a different type of feedback from the community when you're going out to get interviews right there live on the
Yeah.
spot?
Yeah.
You know, how do you prepare for that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, you just have to kind of know when to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of just know um, when not to respond to certain comments. You know, because I think the social media is such a double-edged sword. You know, because on one end, I love interacting with viewers. I love interacting with people on social media, because social media gives people that tool to reach us and for us to reach them. And I love having that reach. But also sometimes, you know, that comes with getting comments that you know, are not necessarily appropriate. But you just have to have thick skin and know when to move on and when to ignore. And you know, especially, you know, if you're covering any stories that are sensitive or have to do with politics, you know, you always have to kind of brace yourself for any sort of comments like that. But, you know, I think you just have to develop thick skin to just let it go. You know, I think that's one thing that's really important that I've learned throughout the years is, you know, just know when to let things go.
That's really good. And what about if you can shine a little light about like, um, you know, early on, and I know you mentioned like having like internships early on in news and media that really led you to this, right? And I know that earlier you mentioned about having a coach who's, you know, giving you feedback
Yeah.
about your performance and how you're, you know, perhaps whether it be sound or words that you're pronouncing.
Yeah.
Those are things sort of like you mentioned that prepared you for this. What about how your family viewed your career? I'm curious. You know, did they understand that you're going to become a news reporter and that was a job, or they're just like, oh, you know, he's just going to go as, or did they see it like acting? You know, was it like acting
Yeah,
for them?
yeah. It's, you know, it's I think you know, I was lucky in that my parents kind of understood what I wanted to do. And so for them, I think in the beginning it was just more so like showing them that, one, I was serious, and two, just showing them that what I wanted to do was realistic and attainable. Because I mean, again, you know, growing up, you don't see a Hmong person on TV. So, you know, for my parents to hear me say I want to be a journalist, one, and I want to be a journalist on TV, you know, for them that was kind of scary, you know, because, you know, they wanted me to have a career where, you know, I was going to be able to thrive and make a living and all that. So I think once they got a I think once they got a sense that I was serious and that this was going to be something that was going to work out, then they were cool with it. I mean, they've been supporting me doing this for a long time. So
That's so wonderful. I'm curious, how did they ever get a chance to express how they felt about seeing you, their own son, on TV?
yeah, yeah, you know, it's yeah. I mean, they were proud and they were excited because I think it's just one of those things, man, where I think they've waited just as long as I did, you know, for to make this happen. And when it finally happened, you know, rightfully so, they felt like it was sort of their accomplishment as well, and they deserve that. I mean, I think they worked really hard to support me through school and push me to be where I'm at. So yeah, it was a good moment.
Because I would imagine it would be like, you know, just if you know people that, you know, just to be on the screen. And I think that's the part I think within our communities, like, but we'll see and hear things being reported. But when you hear the word report, you're often hearing with a negative connotation, like, oh, like someone's going to jail. Someone, you know, as you can see
Yeah,
in the last probably 5 years, like mass shootings or murders and things like that. So it gets like that negative connotation,
yeah,
like, oh, you're going to become
yeah,
a reporter. You're probably reporting on like the negative news.
yeah,
And that could be pretty heavy, I would imagine.
yeah,
And then what about like the things you do get to report on, like the positive news, right? So
yeah,
I think people forget about how news reporting is not just this negative, like,
yeah,
oh, you know, sort of here comes another, you know, shooting, or here comes another unfortunate situation. It really embodies a little bit more of both.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done things on both ends of the spectrum. I've done stories that were positive and has brought change for the better. And I've done stories that were very tragic. You know, it just kind of comes with the job. You know, you just never really know what's going to be your story for the day, and you just kind of have to be prepared for that.
Did you have to prepare everyone's like had everything all planned out and prepared, and then at the last minute the station goes, "Nope, we're not reporting on this tonight. Something else has become more of the
Oh
prime
yeah,
time," and like you're switching gears constantly.
yeah.
Does
Oh
that
yeah.
happen in the job?
Yeah, I mean, every day you prepare for that, you know. I mean, sometimes I guess prepare is the best word I can use, but I mean, you can't really prepare for that. I mean, there have been days where, you know, you're an hour from the show and then something huge breaks and the story that you worked on for, you know, 5 hours, you know, goes out the window and you are on something new. So that, I mean, that happens, and that's what news is. It's fast paced, and you have to kind of just be ready to switch gears when that happens, you know, because you can't really control what happens in the world, you know. So when it happens, then you just have to be ready to switch gears and you know, move.
So with that, I'm curious, like, what do you find that it's like you love most, you know, like you enjoy the most
Yeah.
about your work? Is it that high stamina, ever changing sort of like, you know,
Oh man,
great for
that's a good.
people like that?
Yeah,
Or like,
that's a
what do
good
you love
question.
the most? Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to like narrow it down to a couple things. So I do like that every day is kind of different. You know, I think early on, I knew that I didn't want a career where I was sitting in an office all day or sitting at a cubicle all day. So I like that every day is different. I like that I get out and you know, it's different. I also just like telling stories. I think that's a big part of what I do, and I like telling stories. And then also I like just talking to people. I like interacting with people. I'm an extrovert. I like having conversations on social. So you know, I think the fact that I can pair all of those things together and make a career out of it was I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Awesome. That's wonderful. And I appreciate how you highlighted the 3 points right there. And we talked about your training already, and I really appreciate you talking about, you know, like getting coaching, you know, training. And that's something, was that something you had to personally invest in early on? Like knowing that, you know, you're going to have to get, like, I think that's the biggest piece for me was getting
Yeah,
feedback, you know, and having
yeah,
someone like critique you and give you
yeah,
feedback and take that feedback and say, I can do great things and work
yeah,
on it. Or, you know, I can say, no, I'm not going to do anything about it, you know?
yeah.
So like, what was that piece like when you're getting that coaching from other people in critiquing you?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate in that I've been at stations before who brought in coaches to work with us.
That's so
Um,
awesome.
and then, you know, our managers work with us too because they're always watching the shows. And so, you know, when they notice something, they'll come and talk to you about it, and they'll help walk you through it. I think the biggest thing with this career is that you just always have to be open for feedback and open for critiques. And you just can't take things personally. You know, I think no one no one gets better by, you know, rejecting criticism and critiques. So you just have to always be open for that, and then learn how to apply it. You know, I think we can get all the critiques we want and it can be super constructive and helpful, but if we can't apply it and try to better ourselves from it, then it's not very beneficial. And then again, just hitting home the point that you know, you just can't take it personally. You know, it's a part of growth, and growth requires you to be a little uncomfortable. So you just have to be able to take that, and that's applicable for any career, not just mine. You know, it's applicable for yours and for anyone watching. You know, if you get feedback, apply it. You know, and you know, make the most of it.
That's great. That's wonderful. And I'm curious, you know, as I would probably say, like, you know, we're getting to see more diverse news reporters, anchors, more and more so probably in the last 5 years than I've
Yeah,
seen in
yeah,
the last, you know, compared to 20 years.
yeah.
And why did you think that is? Like,
Um,
what has contributed to more diverse? Or do you think that perhaps, no, we don't, we still are not there and we need more diversity?
uh, I think we're seeing more. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I think we're seeing more. And I mean, I guess I can't really put a finger on exactly what is contributing to it, but I do know that there are lots of people advocating for it. and lots of people supporting the next generation to come up and be a part of our industry. For example, like in my bio, you said that I'm active with the Asian American Journalists Association, and we do a lot of mentoring. We do a lot of we have our big convention next week, and it's through advocacy like that where we really recruit the next generation to get involved and show them that there's a place for them. And I think that sort of advocacy really helps usher in more and more journalists into our industry. And that's not just TV. I mean, that's print as well. And so I think I think that's a big piece of it too, is just really highlighting more diverse journalists and the need for them in the business.
That's great. And I think that's fantastic. Like the mentorship through these associations, whether it be your national associations or local chapters, it's finding mentors, finding people to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing something like this. Would you be able to coach me, train me, or provide me some, tips and strategies? And I think that's so valuable. Oftentimes we probably live in our own little bubbles, and we often forget that there are these experts out there who's doing these type of amazing work, and really just passing on the baton and giving people the chance and opportunity to hire them for their potential. And I think that's fantastic. And those are things like I heard of it, but it's more of like you never know of anyone in it, right? Yeah. And so I think that's wonderful that you're in it and you're getting connected and really growing that network over there. So that's wonderful. So for folks who are interested in watching, definitely Google search it, journalism in your local chapters or associations, go check them out. And I'm wondering as well is, something that when we're covering within the last, a week or two, are there situations in your role where like sometimes it's pretty heavy and you feel like you need to step away from the report or the desk? Has that ever come up before in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, being in this industry for almost 10 years, there are definitely stories that really hit home. There are stories that at the end of the day, I come back home and I sit and I think about it and I'm like, man, that was like really heavy, but that's also a big reason why I go to therapy. I'm a big advocate for therapy. It's just a good way for me to decompress. Because I love what I do, and I think there's so much value in journalism, and I try to find ways to where I can, after like a long day or covering something that's really heavy, I try to find ways to help me decompress, to help me kind of just not like detach so much, but how to work through like what I'm feeling about certain things. So like, for example, with the spa shootings recently, that was really heavy for basically every Asian journalist that I know. That was just a really, really heavy moment for a lot of us. And so we did a lot of just like talking to each other, talking to my therapist, and just really finding ways to like de-stress and decompress.
That's so good. And I'm glad that you're able to do that. I think people often forget that, like seeking out support, whether it be through your colleagues or through your networks, and also like for yourself, like investing in therapy for yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. That's really just self-care, self-love. Totally. And I think that makes you a better, again, human being, but also a better journalist in your work. And I think that's so important. I think within the last 5 days, like I mentioned earlier, as we hear about the Afghanistan, and a lot of people, running, towards the planes. And I was watching and seeing all the news reports coming in, and I was feeling a bit emotional, even though I never experienced it. I'm just one of the children of the refugees, like I call it, the 1.5 generation, right? So I was just one of those born in the refugees camps, but came to the U.S. as a child or as, an infant. And so I remember like my father and my grandfather, like they experienced it themselves. And my grandma, who's still alive to this day, experienced on that plane right there in that moment. And I was feeling like I was getting traumatized. And I think it was just like earlier this week, we had a meeting in my workplace, and I just sort of broke down and cried because it was so emotional for some reason. It was triggering. And then I was just thinking about how, like, when you're reporting things that are very, like, does it ever trigger you? I think that's so important to take care of yourself. And it's probably one of the biggest, for me, it was like one of the biggest news that's been sort of like this year's been sort of an odd year news for me. You
Yeah.
get them. I think the Atlanta shooting, like you mentioned, like the coverage that really affected me too. I think, and a lot of people I know in my professional networks, like women, in particular Asian American women, like
Yeah. Yeah.
myself, and kind of being sort of like deeply shaken by that. And then in addition, we get all excited. So I feel like this year's been sort of like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We get excited. We see the first Hmong Olympian at the Olympics in Tokyo. So it's sort of like,
Yeah.
I'm like crying. I feel like I've been crying all year long.
Yeah. It's been such an I mean it's been a year for sure, and we're only in August, so. But I mean you're right. There's such like an up and down roller coaster with this. I mean, there are things that really hit home for me on both good and bad. And that's why I advocate a lot for therapy and self-care, because on the days where it really hits home for me in like a more of a sad way or something like that, that's when my self-care and time alone and just reading a book or going to therapy, that really helps me. But then there are times where it hits home in a really good way, like when Suni won the gold. I mean, amazing, like this ordinary Hmong girl, it becomes the best at her sport in the entire world, and she's from my hometown, and like Hmong people everywhere are celebrating. And that, to me, I mean, that was such an amazing moment, because it's obviously that was like a big headline and a big news story worldwide. And seeing that was like, I was like so emotional seeing that, because, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, man, if I was like in Tokyo covering this, how emotional would I be? I mean, I'm in Atlanta and I'm emotional. So, I mean, things can really hit home on both ends of the spectrum. And again, that's why I love this job, because you just never really know what to expect.
Yeah, I agree. I too was that the day after, because it was because they do a little ahead of time in Tokyo, and I too was like, I don't know why, but I'm crying. I do know why. I'm excited, but I'm crying. I was just crying because I grew up also, probably like many people, we watched the Olympians, like Christy to what is it? 𝗔𝗄𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀, yes, absolutely. All of those people, and they were amazing. But never in my mind I would ever imagine a Hmong. Like, it was truly our wildest dreams, and it doesn't mean that it was not possible. It's just we'd never seen anyone like that before.
Yeah. I mean, it's and that moment for me was like, since we're talking about awesome careers, that moment for me was so big, because you just think about like how many Hmong kids now are going to be able to have the confidence to do that, because she did it first, and I think it's so important for us to have Hmong people who are like fearless and courageous enough to be the first. You might fail, you might not, but you never know until you do it, right? So that was just a cool moment, man, to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. Now I'm going to walk us back a little bit, talking about like when you were an intern and you were doing your internships, what did you learn that's different from what you are doing in your job? Like, what is something you like? What were the ropes they were teaching you in an internship?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing was just like being in a newsroom and being around journalists who are doing it, because it's hands-on. It's not a classroom. You're not reading a book. You're not listening. You're not like sitting there and just watching someone teach. You're doing it, and you're doing it alongside people who've been doing it for a long time. You're doing it under their guidance. And so I think for me, it was just really being in that atmosphere and seeing the pace of which things were going. It's fast. They're getting an assignment at 10 a.m. and they're turning it for 5 p.m. And so you really see the pace at how they're moving. And I think that was a really, really, really valuable lesson for me, was seeing it play out in real life.
So like, in the real time kind of scenario. Yeah. That's so wonderful. And something I'm wondering about is like when you mentioned earlier, like, being the first, when you go and do something, you might have to fail. Did you ever feel like you felt at, like, for example, the first time you reported on the news, what
Yeah.
was it like? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I was still in college, and this was becoming really real. And then when I got into my first job, I had people, telling me like you're the first Hmong guy to like be in like mainstream TV, and that like I didn't think about that, but that like after like a while, I was like, man, that's like a lot of pressure. But yeah, no, my first time like really hitting the air, it was I tried not to think too much about it and put too much pressure on myself. So I like kind of just did it. And I tried to be forgiving, like knowing that it was my first job. But also at the same time, you want to be so perfect. So I gave myself a lot of grace for when I would mess up and things like that. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of pressure.
How is it now that you've been when
Yeah,
you go live?
I go live every single morning. And so now, I mean, even sometimes I still, get butterflies or I'm still like, really taking a deep breath before I go on and stuff like that. But I mean, now, when you do it for, a long time, sometimes it just, it just kind of becomes second nature, and I think more important than anything, you kind of just have to give yourself a little room to not be perfect. Of course, the information has to be factual and right, but I think in your mind, when you rehearse over and over and over and over, it's supposed to be perfect, right? But you give yourself a little room to not be perfect.
Yes, absolutely. I think, I tell folks, practice in the mirror, practice, right?
Yeah.
Kind of play it back, hear how you sound,
Yeah.
and see how it goes. And if you don't get it right, do it again and again until you are so tired of it that you can say it naturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm wondering really quick, have you ever tried, because you're mainstream, right? So you're speaking English. Have you tried reporting in Hmong completely?
I have not. So that's the thing is I've not tried that, but also I haven't worked anywhere with like really a Hmong population until I moved to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And even here, like the Hmong population is here, but it's not huge. Like it's not like living in St. Paul or Sacramento even. So I have not, but I hope to one day. We'll see how that goes.
Folks, would we love to see that? If you would love to see Chenue do a whole entire report in Hmong, put that in chat. We will love, right? Say, like, report in Hmong completely. My Hmong's horrible. I probably do the Hmonglish style and some words I'm like, I don't know how to say this, but that would be awesome.
Pretty well. I mean, I grew up speaking Hmong, but since I moved away, I haven't really lived anywhere with Hmong people. But I think my Hmong is pretty good still. I think.
If you can get the I am hungry or I need to use the restrooms, yes. Michelle's list, yes, I would love that. Wonderful. Now, going back a little bit more, would you like what is it? Would you do it all over again? Would you choose the same career path? Because I know that you focused on like news reporting here in the US. Would you have considered, like, for example, doing news reporting internationally or a different route?
I think if I could choose it all over again, I would still be in journalism. I mean, as far as like the route that I've taken, I don't think I would change anything. But yeah, I mean, I think I would totally be open for doing like international reporting. I think the thing about this career is that you just always have to kind of stay flexible because you just never know what opportunities are going to pop up. And when that right opportunity comes up, then you have to take it because sometimes the window is so small, you just never really know when that opportunity is going to come up again. So I've always tried to remain really flexible so that when that really good job comes along, it's time to go, and so I try not to box myself in too much.
Okay, wonderful. Michelle's mentioned New Year's reporting in Hmong. Yeah. Kevin says, do a 10-second report on 𝗔𝗰𝗄𝗀𝗃 winning that goal, please. Absolutely.
You guys are
We
funny.
want Chenue to do that reporting for us, right? Wouldn't that be awesome? And I'm wondering, Chenue, if you mentioned like in the past before too, like you know, the part about reporting, like for example, do you get to decide on which news you get to report on, or like what stories you get to report, or is it more like, hey, here's a few highlights, the station, like there's a manager or someone who reports,
Yeah.
like who assigns that, and then you report on it? Like how do you designate what stories?
So at the beginning of each shift, depends on which shift you work, but at the beginning, we all like get it in a big meeting. So it's like all my managers, producers, other reporters, and we all pitch our stories for the day. So we'll pitch ideas, and then our producers and our managers will kind of be like, oh, we like this, or we want you to pursue this. We want you to try to put this together. And then some days, Atlanta's such a busy city that some days, you get in and they already assign you something. So, but on days where it's a little bit slower and we do go in and pitch ideas, then we have like a whole group effort. Like we'll kind of talk through what's the best way to approach what story and how to do that. So, so I don't really like just get to come in with an idea and go do it. We'll pitch it and have like a group discussion. And I do think that works out for the best, because once I start having my team members pitch in, then you really like refine what the story is going to be.
Right. And that's so good. So I think this goes back to like some of the skill set, for example, like you mentioned, like teamwork, right?
Yeah,
You have to be
absolutely.
able to pitch ideas, so public speaking, again, small audience, large audience,
Yeah,
and then as well as also being flexible. You might have done all this amazing work and know that this is a cool story, and then
yeah,
realize you may not get the buy-in of everybody. And so you have to be able to willingly let it go as well. I think that's that's part of the job that you don't really get to learn in an internship, right? That's part of the practice of the craft of the work.
exactly.
That's wonderful. Folks, if I know we're coming towards the last 20 minutes here, if you have questions for Chenue, feel free to pop them in chat and let us know what questions you have for him. And just going back a little bit more, Chenue, like when you mentioned like, you would still continue this path about, news reporting and things like that. But if you had to go back in time and, kind of talk to this 18-year-old, 16-year-old you, what would you have said to yourself?
Oh man, what would I have said to myself? Let's see. I think I would just tell myself that just to work really hard. I mean, I think when I was younger, I think I was a little bit more unsure of what I wanted to do. So there was like a period in my life where I was like a little bit too chillax. But I would just tell myself to work harder, and also save money, man. That's another thing. Just be better about saving for college. But I think I would just tell myself too, just like have a lot of patience. Because I think when I was younger, you envision yourself finishing high school, going to college, getting that degree, and then jumping into working, right? And you think you're gonna jump right into a career, and you have certain expectations for it. And I think for me, I think being in this career for almost 10 years, I think it took a lot of patience for me to get here. And so I would just tell myself to be patient and not rush so much, and just really enjoy the process of getting here.
That's wonderful, and I really appreciate that. I think people forget that, like just owning that craft, right? You're crafting, you're getting better and better at it.
Yeah.
And like there's this pressure all of a sudden to get to this final destination at the end, and like you forget to enjoy the journey of like practicing, getting better at it. And that's really important.
Oh my God, the journey is so fun. I mean, for anyone watching, like the journey is so fun, man. I remember like that first job when I was so broke, and I look back on it and I'm like, man, but I was having so much fun. Like, I was like barely making any money, but I was working my dream job, and all my coworkers, we were all broke, but we had so much fun because that was like a time in our life where we were able to really, like do what we love and really learn the craft and study it and hone our skills, and I mean, I had so much fun during those years.
That's wonderful. That's so good. I'm glad. It's one of those things I tell myself too, like, like I remember back in college, you're a starving student, right? It was sort of like the starving
Yeah.
student mentality. And
Yeah.
like you're so busy studying and working that like when you come home and you eat that cup of noodle, right? And it
Yeah.
tastes so good.
Yeah, exactly.
But like now I eat it and I'm like, it just doesn't like, I have everything at my fingertips, but I'm like, it just doesn't taste as good as when I was a college student. It tastes so good back then.
You make some of those noodles, put some rice on it. Oh, that was it. That was it.
That's funny. That's hilarious. And I'm kind of curious a little bit more, like, what's going to happen? What do you envision in seeing that, with social media and technology
Yeah.
nowadays, that like, how is like reporting news, what's happening in this industry, where are we going, what do we see? I'm kind of seeing a little bit, like, as I get older, I'm paying more attention to the
Yeah.
news, right?
Yeah.
So like, I'm actually I actually don't have watch the regular local news stations.
Yeah.
And that's because the way we absorb information is so different now than 10 years ago. We have it on our web, we have it on our phone. What's happening with this industry that people should know about?
I think you're right. I think that there are so many ways now where you can get your news. And it just sort of depends on how we use it. I think it really gives us the opportunity to have a wider reach, and really meet people where they are, versus telling you every day, hey, if you want your news, you have to come watch the TV at 5 o'clock. Now we have the opportunity to really meet you where you are. So if, say, you want to be on Facebook all day, well, great. I can bring you your news on Facebook versus forcing you to come meet me. And I think that's such like an important thing, that an advantage to all the different ways we can get our news now. But I still think it's important that consumers and viewers really pay attention to where they're getting their news from. So, for example, you live in Sacramento, right? So Sacramento Bee is a good outlet for your local news, or KCRA, or ABC 10, like all the local stuff, right? And then you have the national stuff. So you got to just be conscious of where you're getting your news to make sure it's like good, credible information. Because for us, that we have a wide reach, right? But that reach is a privilege for everyone. So anyone can put information out there for anyone to consume. So you got to just make sure you're getting it from the right, incredible sources.
That's so important. I'm glad you touched upon that. I think that was like sort of, to me, what I've seen within the last 10 years is the involvement, like, as social media became bigger and more popular and mainstream, it become also more dangerous of how we absorb information, because traditionally you would get your information, you knew that was credible sources because it came from your local news station, right? And so if something happened, okay, this is real, this is something important, they would never report it if it wasn't real. And so I think that it gets sort of blurred along the lines when we were on social media, as we're on social media more, is that, what's fact versus, what's a lie, and like, all these hearsay. So it becomes sort of like, again, muddy content, right? And so it gets, to me, it always feels like a little bit more dangerous if it didn't came from a credible source. And I think sometimes over the last 10 years, what I'm seeing is that over the audience has sort of like been comfortable in social media, but don't utilize the critical thinking skills to analyze it and go whether or not that was credible. And I do find that very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think we have to keep in mind that, don't just believe what affirms what you believe, like sometimes the facts do maybe challenge what you believe, but if those are the facts, and those are the facts, and if it's coming from a credible source, then it's coming from a credible source. Because if you really want to look that deep, like on the internet, you will probably always be able to find something that affirms what you believe and affirms your stance. But is that the credible and like the reality? You know what I mean? So you got to just be careful to what you're consuming as far as news goes. But I think that's the great thing, is that, nowadays you can really get news from wherever you are, whether that's on your phone or your iPad or your computer, or if you still prefer to watch traditionally like on TV, or, on your Roku, like however you want to do it, you can find news.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And I know that, one of the things that I appreciate was that, it's sort of those double-sworded edge, was like, content
Yeah.
but I think that what I really enjoy was when the news station if they didn't get it right, they took accountability
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
saying, hey, this was reported on X amount of date and time, and after further research into it, here are the new updated facts.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought was what I appreciate more was when news stations were able to catch, because you get a lot of input from the audience right now with social media, people putting comments and saying, no, this is what actually happened. And as research went into it, being able to be accountable for your facts and telling your audience, I think that was the difference here versus these other stuff that are not credible.
Yeah.
That's really great. And I know we're coming down towards the last 10 minutes or so. Oh my gosh, time goes by so fast. And I'm kind of curious, what advice, and I know you mentioned it throughout already a little bit more, would you recommend someone who's thinking about this type of career, who's thinking about going to news journalism or media, or, who's, thinking, can I do this? Can I actually do this for a living?
Yeah, I love this question because I want to see more Hmong people in journalism. I think one advice, and this is so important for anyone who's interested in journalism, or honestly in any career, but find like really good mentors and ask a lot of questions. I mean, I think finding a good mentor and asking good questions and just being open to learning is so important, because you never know as much as you think you know. And so for anyone that wants to get into this industry, reach out, connect with people who are in the business. You'd be surprised at how willing people are willing to help. So I definitely do that. And then also just be very persistent. I mean, I never took no for an answer. If someone says no, I find a different way to do it. And you just have to be very persistent, and you have to really, really want it. Because TV news media is like a very competitive industry, and so you got to just really want it, and you got to work really hard. But also, I consider myself a student still. I mean, I've been in the business for almost 10 years, and I'm still trying to learn every day. Every move that I make to a different city, every shift that I work, I'm always trying to learn. And I think that's so important for any industry, is to just, constantly be curious to learn and be hungry for more knowledge. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, try to apply any critiques that you get, and just having that constant need to get better at what you do is so important. I mean, you'd be surprised at, things you still learn 10, 15 years down the road about what you do. So, do that. And I want to see more Hmong people in journalism. So
That's so awesome. And yes, absolutely. I think that's wonderful. Networking, being persistent, right? And just being like truly a learner, a lifelong learner, because, what you're doing today may be very different in 20, 40 years from now, what news reporting might be, right? And I think that just means that we have to be flexible. Like what you mentioned throughout is that being flexible to, shifting gears in case things do change and you have to change around and do something different.
Totally.
Hi, Gina. Gina's here with us.
That's my friend.
Awesome. Wonderful. And I know that we're coming here to a close. So folks, again, if you have questions, feel free to pop them down in chat and let us know. But Gina, what's the next step for you? Give us an idea of what's going to be happening, about where your journey's going, because I know that you're in the middle of moving.
Yeah. So if you notice, this shelf right here is empty because I'm in the middle of moving and packing my place up. But I'm moving to Des Moines, Iowa, on the 1st, and I start there mid-September, and I'm going to be anchoring mornings. So it's something that I've worked for a while now. I've been wanting the opportunity to be an anchor. It's just kind of that next step in my career that I wanted to get to. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be anchoring Monday through Friday mornings at the ABC station in Des Moines. I'm really, really excited. And yeah, I mean, it's just like such a big step forward. Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting for me because you know, I see like so many like incredible like Hmong women who are friends of mine who have like really just broken that glass ceiling for us in news media and mainstream news media. You know, like 𝗔𝗲𝗃𝗃 and Laura Lee in the Rochester area. I mean, they've done such an incredible job holding it down, and you know, I think they've really paved the way, and you know, now I'm excited to, you know, for my turn to come up and to be able to get on the anchor desk and do it as well. So I'm excited. I mean, it's an opportunity that I've waited and worked for, and so I think, you know, it's gonna be a good time, and
Yeah.
I might be the first Mo anchor in Des Moines like ever, so that's like super exciting.
But everyone show some love for Chenue, first Hmong, right, reporter or anchor. That's so awesome. And to me, hearing you be the first, or even if you're not the first, right? Let's just say if you're the 100th person, right?
Yeah.
How exciting that is, because I think that it's just you're navigating into an industry that I think when we're talking about like aspiration and goals, like going back to this 5-year-old kid version of you, would you have ever imagined and saw yourself and know that a Hmong kid like yourself can get there one day, right?
I mean, it's crazy because, you know, like even when I think about it, I'm just like I kind of like squirm because, you know, I think about like me being a kid. I mean, just a normal Hmong kid growing up in the Twin Cities, and you know, you don't envision that, like, you know, you get into a career and you become like the first at some of the things that you do, and it's such a blessing, man. And honestly, I've been really just like blessed to follow in the footsteps of like some other Hmong people who have done such an incredible job with this industry, and they've really paved the way for me to get to where I am. And it's crazy to think, man. Like I said, you know, growing up, you know, we didn't see Hmong people on TV, and now, you know, to have all these incredible like Hmong sisters in the business, and then, you know, me following along, and, you know, this next generation is going to come up and do it, and they're going to probably be even better than us, you know, and I'm so excited for that.
Yes, absolutely. I put in the hashtag in chat, first of many. All right. We are the first of many. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of you. I just want to let you know that when I came across your career and I was so excited, I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think I've seen anyone in mainstream get to this level that was a Hmong. And I just appreciate you being the brave one and say, I'm the first and let me show you how I'm going to do it. Right. And you know, your success, you know, like I said, probably was not easy. Took time, took a lot of craft, years of working and persistence, like you're saying, you know, just keep getting better at what you do and finding mentorship, seeking therapy, seeking support, and growing yourself professionally has just been an amazing journey to hear. And I hope that tonight folks are able to hear from you and feel that we learn a little bit more about another Hmong brother who here is paving the way for many of our future children's in the future, you know, who are going to be the next anchors. I'm excited. I was telling you, like, you know, if my dream will be to see a Hmong professional on GMA. Yes, that's Good Morning America.
Amazing.
That's my dream for, you know, for all of the folks who I would love to see that. That to me is like being on the national scale. But, you know, like I said, it all has to start with someone first. And I appreciate you taking the journey on and just really diving in and sharing with us about your, you know, your approach to it, and just, you know, being authentic and real with us about, you know, the hard part of the job, as well as the, you know, the great things about the job. So I really do appreciate, you know, your experience here and sharing with us. I know we're coming right at the end of time. Chenue, do you have any last words for us, for our audience, or for folks catching the the replay?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to like really thank everyone for supporting my career to get to where I am. I think something that I've always held true to throughout my whole career is the fact that at the end of the day, I'm Hmong, and I represent the Hmong community, and I love you guys for all your support. And honestly, I'm not the only Hmong journalist out there in mainstream. There are so many, like we have, not so many. There's a small community of Hmong journalists, and they're all so talented at what they do. And hopefully, you know, through the work that we do, that the next generation sees. You know, we can help bring up more Hmong journalists. But I just want to shout out a few Hmong journalists that have been like so amazing, so that you guys can follow them and you guys know of them. But obviously, 𝗔𝗲𝗄𝗃 at KARE 11, Laura Lee at ABC in the Rochester area. She anchors down there, and she's been doing it for a long time, and she's great. And then you have Chao Zhang. He's a newspaper reporter at the Star Tribune in Minneapolis. And then you have Nancy Yang. She works at NPR in the Twin Cities. She's been like incredible to me for years and years, and she's great at what she does. And then you have 𝗲𝗏. I mean, 𝗲𝗏 is like the Hmong mainstream news, like OG. She does like radio. She's incredible, and so you guys should follow her work. She's great. And I hope I'm not missing anyone. And then I know like 𝗵𝗲𝗃 she's not in news anymore. She does PR now, but she was like very, very, very instrumental in like helping me get on this path to news when I was in college. I like randomly emailed her one day and she responded, and she was like so amazing. She was in Wisconsin at the time. But yeah, we just have so many like incredible Hmong journalists. And so anyone who's interested in the business, please reach out to any of us. Oh, 𝗵𝗲 Yang at 𝗑𝗏𝐶CO recently started there, so she's great too. So yeah, reach out to any of us. I mean, we all are in this because we love it. We're not in this to get rich or get famous. We're all in this because we love journalism. We love Hmong people. And so yeah, let us know if you guys have any questions.
Wonderful. And Chenue, how can people find you and follow your work or kind of get updates regarding the things that you're passionate about?
I'm the easiest person to find on the internet. So yeah, just type in my name on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and you guys can find me and connect with me. I love connecting with everyone. So reach out anytime, and if there's anything I can do to help, yeah, let me know. I'm always available. So.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And you heard it, folks. Here with us live is Chenue. He shares so much tips and strategies and walking us through, you know, the life of the desk anchor and the reporter. Just so, again, thankful for your time and energy. I know you probably had to go to bed because that's part of the job is discipline to go to bed early for that 5 a.m. work shift. But again, thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing your news and reporting as you transition for your big move ahead, and just looking forward to all the great things ahead. So thank you so much for joining us on the Awesome Careers podcast show tonight.
Thank you, Eva.
All right. Have a good one. Bye. All right, folks. So again, thank you so much for Chenue for his time. Just again, amazing. Really appreciate that. For folks, if you just a reminder, if you found this helpful, feel free to please give us a like on and subscribe on YouTube and Facebook. Lets us know that, you know, we can continue to start doing more and more of this. But just a reminder, next week we have on the podcast is actually Dr. 𝗂𝗏𝗀𝗃, who is a psychologist. She's going to come and share about her experience and her work. And so if you're interested in that, come join us on, again, next Thursday, 6 o'clock Pacific time. And we love to share with you all about her work and her journey as well. So again, check that out. We'd love to hear from folks about, you know, if you're curious about what you can do with a career in psychology, right? And how does the work of a psychologist affect the work that we learn here? So really great to have Dr. 𝗂𝗏𝗀𝗃 joining us next week. And then for folks who are interested in continuing this type of work and learning more, on the following, which is Thursday, September 2nd, I will be doing a workshop for everyone's free, but it's inside our group on Facebook. So you have to join the group in the Facebook group, and that's when you can actually see the live stream of how to create an online portfolio for free. I'm gonna walk you through the steps of what's essential, why do we need a portfolio in our professional branding as we connect and network with other folks. So if you're interested in learning how to do that, definitely join our Facebook group. Oops, excuse me. And then lastly, don't forget, folks, if you want more of that one-on-one coaching, right? Whether it be on career exploration, resume, LinkedIn profile, and networking, and even, of course, one of my favorites is interview and salary negotiating. Feel free to connect with me, and happy to share with you about my coaching sessions. You can book one already this week, and we can actually jump and dive deeper into that. If you want more in depth about understanding your talents, your strengths, and your skills, we have also sessions on those as well. So again, don't forget to connect with me, learn more, and you can definitely sign up for a session. So without further ado, again, thank you all so much for joining. Really appreciate this. And I'll catch you all next Thursday with Dr. 𝗂𝗄𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 But besides that, y'all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it. And everyone, have a good night and take care. Bye, everyone.